I see a few hands up here and then over here. So do you want to go first and then over here and then Esther? Okay.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name's Armstrong. I'm a PhD student at Simon Fraser studying HIV vaccines, HIV vaccine development. I think it's a great point that you raised about where education is in our culture and in this system, and the fact that people don't want to be in school. To my mind, and I'm not a specialist at this or anything, but I just think that it becomes very institutionalized, where you're born and you get into school, you finish grade school, you go to high school, you finish high school, you go to college. People don't know why they're doing these things anymore. They're just walking down this path that's been determined for them. Now, you'll find that even in this society today, even with the economy as it is and such things, there's no evolution of the system. We're using the same systems that we've been using from forever. So that's a problem, because opportunities change, the landscape changes, so should the system that's bringing people into the new opportunities. But without that change, there's not an adjustment, and I think that's why you have the dissonance and people don't want to go to school anymore, because why are they going to school? They don't know that. They don't see that. Now, to the point of the system that's being taken to other places. Now, for in the example of Education Without Borders, what if it seems that there's no system already? I mean, there's no previous system, so it's pretty hard to go in there with a very fine ideal in what's going to happen there. I think teaching math is very important because it's very progressive, and it's a language of science, it's a language of development, it's a language of progression. I think what's important to know, what's important to keep in mind is once you have things like math having traction, and English getting some traction, then you could start processing and developing a more, I'd say, solid plan on how to progress with it. But I think right at the beginning, when you go into a place where there's no system, it's pretty hard to determine what's the best way of doing it. You just want, the problem is so huge, you just have to take a chunk out of it somehow, and then proceed with that.
Yeah. Great point. And over here, I think you had your hand up.
Hi, my name is Jennifer. I'm a journalist. I did a thesis on migration in Spain or in Europe on African migrants. For me, I was listening with great interest to what the Hirschers are doing. A lot of the migrants that I worked with and that I studied and interviewed and spent time with, they didn't have an education. They'd come to Europe to do what they could. And I think it's inspiring what a lot of NGOs and projects are doing in these countries in terms of helping people. But again, what you were saying about giving them skills, perhaps if there's no jobs, there are no jobs in a lot of places these days. So giving them the skills to be self-employed, to do something. These people, the migrants I studied, many of them had no formal education, or even if they did, they might not have had papers to work legally in Europe. So they were selling things on the road. They were doing what they could, and then their idea would be to take back and either send money home to invest or to eventually go home and set up a business. Because in their country, in Senegal, the government, there's only 3% of the economy, or 3% of the population is salaried. The remaining 97% is in the informal sector, people just buying and selling and trading and doing things to make a living and maybe doing multiple projects, being very resourceful. I think in this sense, education, it is relative. You need to, I believe people need to be aware of their rights, be able to articulate themselves, say if they arrive in a new place, to defend themselves from human rights abuses or any other things that they could be subjected to along the way. So I think education is important at a certain level. However, a lot of people can't afford to take the time to be educated. They need to get out and work, like the Afghan children who are begging in the street. it's unfortunate, but I think if we give people the tools, whatever those tools may be, to help themselves, whether it be a formal education or just the ability to stand up for themselves, I think it's very important. I don't know. I mean, because I think when you educate everybody, everybody has so many degrees. How many jobs are there for those people with so many degrees? In the end, you know, in Europe, people are protesting. They don't have a future. So I guess maybe entrepreneurship, trades. I don't know. I'm hoping that I'm building on something that people were talking about, but I do agree that, you know, education here, it doesn't fit with everyone. It doesn't fit with everyone everywhere in the world either. So I think it's great SFU is doing this, but we have to think of alternate ways and helping people help themselves.
Right. Thank you, Jennifer. And over here, Esther. So if you can help us, because I think we heard earlier that you're trying to connect what we've heard can be very challenging. So are we on the conversation about this edge, you know, whether education, the system is there to oppress or to liberate? Are we picking up, you know, and I think the point that you made about the edge is a fine one to walk on, and that it could create opportunities as well as set people up for expectations in a system that can't fulfill. So Esther, I don't know if you can help us take this to another
Actually,
place?
I think I might be able to formulate a question that might help out with the discussion.
Okay.
So my name's Esther. I'm also a journalist. I've also done a lot of international humanitarian aid work. And to pick up on what Jen was saying, in terms of giving people skills and what the Hirschers are doing, pointing out that you can educate people, you can give them skills, but if you're going into a job market where there's 60% unemployment, you know, we still have some work to do. So here's my question. I mean, education, we've been talking about how education can help individuals better themselves and their lives for their family. But what about education for systemic change, right? Educating the people about why it is that they're in the situation that there is and the skills needed around social organization to have a movement for systemic change. Is there a place for that kind of education within the projects that you guys are talking about and that you guys are working on?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm just going to take a moment because, Jean, I hope you don't mind me singling you out, because I know a little bit about the work you're doing in Rwanda, and that perhaps this picks up on the idea of education for co-ops, for self-organizing, for understanding one's human rights. Do you want to say a little bit about what you've been doing? Are you? Thanks.
Yeah, sure, no problem. My name is Jean de Dieu Tisenge. I'm from Rwanda, so yeah, I was gonna say something later on, building up to that lady over there, what she said, and this gentleman from South Africa, who's working in South Africa, what he said. But from my personal experience and what I have been through from the age of 8, when I had no parents and I had to be on my own from the age of 8. So I have seen it all over the world. When I went to France at the age of 12, after 4 years alone, I have seen. So from what she said over there, like you have education is the only way to make it out. You like it or not, you have, it's a formal, it's kind of shapes our way out there. So I consider it as very important, because I remember when I was from France, I went to South Africa, where the system automatically changed into English when I was used to French system. So it was very hard for me to make it there. I had to work hard. I could not open, because of the story. I want to be brief. There's too much story behind it. Everybody knows what's happened in Rwanda during 1994, the genocide and the stuff. So I was a victim of that. So from there, when I was in South Africa, I could not even speak English. I was French speaking, and I had some difficulties with my jaw. I could not open my long story. So I tried my best without any English, but I went in grade 10 right there in high school, which was very difficult. But all my teacher was like, are you gonna be able to make it? Everything was in English. I don't know, I don't have any background of English, just French. I'm like, I will try. And I tried. I took English on high grade. They call it high grade, is high grade, standard grade, second language, and lower grade. So I took like 6 subjects in English, and I tried my best. I passed grade 11, and I passed grade 12 national exam to get my high school certificate. From there, I was awarded a certificate to go to university and so on. So no one was giving me any chance. And from there, that's how I came to make it here. So education is very important. From there, I thought of who people I left in Rwanda when I was 8 years old. I thought about it, like mostly of them, they don't have parents. Some they are disabled, some they are orphans, some they poor, they cannot afford school fees because high school there you have to pay from now they changed the system, primary school is free, like elementary school is free, but high school you still need to pay. So there's some more kids that I knew, their parents were victims of the genocide who died. And I looked after myself, looked at myself back in days, all the way how I passed through. I'm like, oh, well, I'm lucky to be here, to have sound education. I've made it in high school where no one gave me a chance. I came here. When you come here in this country, you are a foreigner. It's very hard to go to make it into university. They first ask you to go undergo the English test, TOEFL. I never went, or ESL or whatever. So everybody who had, I've been here 2 months and I enrolled at university, plus SFU University. Everybody was, are you sure you never done any questions or tests or whatever? You know, no one could believe it. So from there, I'm like, I'm very lucky to be here and I have to do something back home and give back to the community because I was inspired. I supposed to be maybe somewhere or dead, but I'm alive. I survived the genocide. I survived the hardship through all the way, and I'm like, no, I have to do something to give it back to the community. So coming back to this, what they've said, coming to this South African man, in South Africa, it's where I had my high school education. It's a very nice country. Also, you always meet different, obstacles, which as a human, you can never, ever run away from. So he mentioned that the vocational skills, everyone, like 60% South Africans, they're unemployed, and some kids, they don't have a job as well. That's not only like South Africa. I mean, like it's everywhere in Rwanda. That's what I'm doing. I started up an organization called Ed Africa, like Education for Africans. So it happens that every time we need somebody to help us to do things. So I'm like, it's time someone to stand up and do things for ourselves. We don't need somebody to come and help us doing what we're supposed to be doing. So from there, I started up this organization helping for orphans and people. There's a lot of disease, maybe orphan from genocide or from HIV/AIDS or just pure person poor who cannot find school fees. So what we do, we take all those, most of them you find like they are over age, like 20, still in high school or 19, 18. So it's kind of hard to get that somebody to go and do something else where he must learn the theories. So we decided that through vocational skills, it's when they will have something to fall back on and devote themselves and their families and the whole community and the whole world as a whole. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think your story really illustrates where we were sharing the stories about specific projects and the ways that education is having an impact. And we've heard a lot about individual change that has had a ripple effect to the system. I think we could agree, maybe even though we're not looking for agreement, but perhaps there's a consensus that that kind of ripple, that kind of partnership and support, being with in solidarity with others, is a liberating approach to education. And I've heard from all of the speakers tonight that seems to be their raison d'etre. That's an assumption, a working assumption. But we want to transition now to another question, sort of the wider question, and that is, and as Jean was pointing out, this notion of, and there's the real strong drive to go back and reconnect with a country or a region or territory, and the people who are, there's personal connection, whether you know the people or not, you know their stories. And we want to now move into this question around the real promising, what is unique, what is promising about the diaspora's role in education. Because I think, and I know from talking to many of the people that are here tonight, that there's this real deep connection to a place, and that there are deep traditions in education that are very unique to that particular culture or place. And this is a part of the conversation that we want to have. What is the unique and promising role? Jean talked about, the desire to give back, and you give back based on what you know about that place and what people are saying they want.